In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, "I tell you, do not swear an oath at all. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one." Jesus' words present a problem for Christians who want to serve in law enforcement, the military, and even medicine, because these and other professions require members to swear an oath before entering the field. Are these oaths a violation of Christian teaching? What should these Christian professionals do? Welcome to Apostolic Life in the 21st Century, a podcast dedicated to helping modern-day believers live out the teachings of the first century church. This podcast is part of the teaching ministry of Dr. David K. Bernard. Dr. Bernard has dedicated his life to studying the Bible and helping believers apply its message to their daily lives. In Apostolic Life in the 21st Century, Dr. Bernard answers your questions about what the Bible teaches and how those teachings apply to everyday life. If you enjoy this podcast, we encourage you to check out Dr. David K. Bernard's books. Dr. Bernard has written more than 30 books on biblical theology and Christian living and leadership. Visit Pentecostalpublishing.com and search David Bernard for a list of available titles. Enter promo code DKB10 at checkout to save 10% on your order. That's Pentecostalpublishing.com, promo code DKB10 to save 10% at checkout. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'Do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made.' But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one." That's Matthew 5:33 and 34, and verse 37 from the New International Version. So some of our audience members have read these verses, and that has sparked a question for them because they're in professions that require members to swear an oath. This would include members of the military, doctors, lawyers, judges, political office holders, just to name a few. Is swearing an oath when you go into one of these roles, for example, the military or law enforcement, is it a violation of Christian teaching, and is there an alternative for Christians?
You know, this is a teaching of Scripture that we don't often consider, and we should consider it more than we do. And the root teaching is honesty, integrity. And there's a problem in our culture, and I see it even in church. People take the truth very lightly. And so it's very easy to lie to get out of trouble. It's easy to shade the truth when it's in our best interest, or we think it's in our best interest. And so I think we need to really heed the words of Jesus. What he's really trying to say at the bottom line is we should, as Christians, we should be known as telling the truth at all times. Now, I will hasten to add, maybe you don't have to say everything you think or everything you know. Also, you're not obligated to tell the truth. You shouldn't lie, but you're not obligated to tell truth to the whole truth, nothing but the truth to everyone who asks. So to your spouse, there's a high degree of accountability. To a stranger, you're not obligated to explain a lot of things. So one question could be, to whom do you owe the truth? And so, like if it's the Nazis are knocking on your door saying, do you have Jews in your house? Do you have an obligation to tell them the truth? And you know, there could be different questions on that. That brings up another issue: is there hierarchy where it's you can do a lesser evil to avoid a greater evil? But aside from those rare cases, I think what Jesus is saying is we should be known as people of our word. We always tell the truth. It's a given. We're going to always tell the truth. Our friends, our employees, employers, our coworkers are going to know whatever we say they can count on. And so if you think about it, when you swear by an oath, what you're actually implying is normally you can't trust me to tell the truth. But in this rare case, I promise you. And again, our society doesn't fully appreciate this, but when you say oath, what that technically means is you're calling God to be your formal witness. So what you're saying is, if I'm not telling the truth, I'm asking God to strike me dead right now. So for people that really believe in God, that believe in judgment, believe in heaven and hell, that's pretty serious. So in generations past, for people to take an oath, and usually they would do it on the Bible, that is actually saying, I want God to judge me, and if I am lying or if I don't keep my promise, I want God to kill me and send me to hell. And so for people that are believers, that's about as strong as you could say. But Jesus comes against that, saying no, because you're implying there's two standards of truth, that most of the time you can't count on me to be honest, but this time you can. And also maybe you don't really have authority to do that, and Jesus uses the example, don't swear by God's throne. Don't swear by heaven because it's God's throne, nor by earth because it's his footstool, nor by Jerusalem for the city of the king, nor shall you swear by your head because you can't make one hair white or black. I guess some people try to challenge the Lord on that. So he's saying, whatever you would swear by, you don't have authority. Now in the Old Testament, we find God swearing by himself. That's okay because he's vouching for himself. But who would we call? We don't have control over. So you swear on the Holy Bible. Can you change the Holy Bible? You don't have the right to say that. And so Jesus is saying, just be known for telling the truth. Also, we have the same teaching in the book of James, which is kind of interesting because James often echoes the Sermon on the Mount, which maybe he's writing to a primarily Jewish audience, but maybe he's the half-brother of Jesus, so he's one of the ones that seems to actually go back to the very words of Jesus more than most of others. But James 5:12, but above all, my brethren, do not swear, either by heaven or by earth or with any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no, no, lest you fall into judgment. Now, some people have also said there's few places in the Apostle Paul's writings where he says, I'm telling the truth, I'm not lying, God's my witness. So they say, isn't he taking an oath? I don't think it rises to that level. He's just trying to say, as we might say, when we're challenged or when our integrity is questioned, it's not that we can't be trusted normally, but when we're under attack, we can say, look, God knows I'm telling the truth. I am verifying. So the practical case, I do think this means in our normal speech, we should not say, I swear this, I swear that. Because you are implying two standards of truth. You are implying less trustworthiness for most of what I say. So I don't think in our conversation we should ever do that. Now, when it comes to a formal declaration, many Christians, theologians have said, well, that's not what Jesus or James is talking about because it's more like what Paul was saying. When your integrity is challenged or when you're formally put on formal legal notice that you are you telling the truth or not? And of course, in a legal context, you're assuming not just you as a Christian, but the whole society, which cannot be trusted. So many will argue there is an exception for that. However, what's very interesting, under U.S. law, going back from early times, and this is because of the Anabaptists of the Reformation, they took this very literally and said, we don't want to take any oath, and the Quakers and others. So under U.S. law, you can say, I affirm, which simply means, yes, I'm affirming this statement. So you can always say, and usually you'll see if you're asked to sign something, do you swear or affirm? Or when you go to a court, they can ask you, do you swear or affirm? And sometimes they'll give you a choice. Or if they say, do you solemnly swear? You can respond and say, I'm willing to affirm. Now, some would regard that as a technicality, but the distinction is when you swear, you're calling God as the witness. When you affirm, you're just simply saying, I'm telling the truth. If you're wanting to know, you're challenging me, you're questioning me, I am telling the truth, but I'm not presuming to bring God in the picture. I'm not presuming because, even though the concept is if I'm lying, God can strike me dead, but who's to say God is going to strike you dead? What if he doesn't? Does that mean you're telling the truth? Not necessarily. Who are you to manipulate God? Who are you to put God on the spot saying, well, God, if I'm not telling the truth, you have to kill me? No, he doesn't. He's sovereign. He can do what he wants to do. My personal feeling is this, what I practice. don't say that you swear by anything. And I do always, whenever I'm called in a legal context, I always say I'm willing to affirm. I'm not saying that is essential, but I do think we should take this seriously, that what we say as Christians, we should be committed to the truth, and our society, our friends, and our acquaintances should know we are going to always tell the truth. We might not say everything we know. If we're in a context where we don't owe certain obligation to someone, we may not tell them what they might want to know. There is a right to conceal. I don't think there's a right to lie, but there is a right to conceal from people that don't have a right to know. And you can find examples in the Old Testament where even God himself told Samuel, when you go to anoint David as king, go with a sacrifice. If someone asks you, don't tell them about what else you're going to do. Just tell them about the sacrifice. Well, some might say that's lying. No, it's not, because the person that would be asked the question doesn't have a right to know, because they would use that to try to kill David. So you're not going to lie, but you don't have to say everything you know. So there are a lot of nuances that I've just briefly alluded to, but I think the fundamental teaching is we should not have two standards of truth. We don't need to take oaths. We don't need to swear. We just need to tell the truth.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Apostolic Life in the 21st Century. If you enjoy this podcast, please take a moment to give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. We also appreciate it when you share Apostolic Life in the 21st Century with a friend or family member. And make plans to join us again next time as we look at how the Bible applies to everyday life.